This Black History Month, we at CBS 4 are recommitting ourselves to elevating Black voices across Colorado, highlighting both the history of where we've been as a state and where we're going.
Colorado has a rich history shaped by Black community members across time. And now our state continues to be shaped by Black leaders committed to making Colorado a more diverse and inclusive state. We start this program with where we've been. There is renewed efforts to preserve Colorado's Black spaces that signify perseverance and determination when discrimination was the way of the world. This first story is brought to you by photojournalist Kevin Strong and meteorologist Dave Aguilera from Deerfield, Colorado.
This chain link fence protects the remains of the town of Deerfield, Colorado.
This was the gas station with gas pumps out in the front.
University of Northern Colorado professor George June has spent the past 3 decades working to save what has survived from this once thriving agricultural town.
We have O.T. Jackson's name in the wood, so we know that this is original.
O.T. Jackson was an African-American promoter who wanted fellow African-Americans to have a piece of the American dream.
Owning a home is more than just having your own space. It's also something that you can give to your children, your grandchildren.
He founded the town of Deerfield in 1910 to give African Americans a place to thrive in the American West, in a time when they were still viewed by many as second-class citizens.
Denver was a segregated city, so Black people could only live in certain areas such as Five Points.
Deerfield quickly prospered.
Almost anybody who was African American knew about Deerfield.
The town enjoyed unwavering success for nearly 20 years, until an unforeseen cycle in the weather would spell its demise.
The Dust Bowl comes in and takes out everything.
The settlers scattered with the winds. By 1950, little remained. The story of Deerfield would have faded with the buildings were it not for June and fellow UNC professor Robert Brunswick.
Linoleum has got to go.
The two professors began documenting the site with the help of the Black American West Museum, which now owns the site. The renewed attention led it to being listed on Colorado Preservation's most endangered list in 1999.
The more people find out about Deerfield, what we're finding is that there are people who are interested.
We've been working to get grants. We've been working to preserve the buildings as much as we can.
Their efforts are beginning to bear fruit. The site recently received a $500,000 grant from the National Park Service.
I didn't think anything was going to come of it. And now Deerfield is starting to have a second life.
Congressman Ken Buck and Joe Neguse have introduced legislation to study the possibility of making Deerfield a part of the National Park Service, which would pave the way for additional funding for restoration and interpretation. To learn more on Deerfield and efforts to preserve the town, you can head to our website at cbsdenver.com for the longer version of the story.
Now we take you to Gilpin County, where a piece of Colorado history turns 100 this year. Lincoln Hills was a resort for African Americans during segregation. Guests included greats like Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong, who weren't allowed to stay in Denver. I took a trip to the resort to hear from the people fighting to keep its legacy alive.
If we go through here, we've created a breezeway that connects the extension.
At a cabin hidden in the Rockies, Gary Jackson is restoring a piece of his past.
And if we come over here,
his family built Zephyr View in 1926, in one of the few places Black people could.
Lincoln Hills was that special place between the Mississippi and California. They could come to recreate, but more importantly, they could come to buy property, to build cabins. I want to take that down.
Upkeep is a responsibility and a joy, but Jackson has helped preserving the land's history. Down the road, Denver native and billionaire Robert Smith purchased the historic Winks Lodge.
This lodge was in the Green Book.
And next door sits the Honeymoon Cabin. But this landmark isn't in the care of relatives.
Here's another piece of, that's more tattered, but from the Rocky Mountain News.
The century-old cabin now belongs to Shelley Catterson, a writer from Gilpin County.
I just felt very strongly about it being preserved.
Catterson bought it in 2007, giving history a new chapter. She comes here to write, inspired by guests who have checked in, enamored by their strength through adversity.
I heard that Zora Neale Hurston was here and that I just about fell over. So, that was amazing to me.
When Crow ruled Colorado, the county she calls home was breaking barriers.
A local area was so tolerant and open and all of that, even in the 20s when the governor was a known member of the KKK.
Lincoln Hills was a light in our dark history, and people today won't let it be forgotten. For Catterson, that means taking time to dust off old covers.
I've just added books by the writers who were here.
And for Jackson, it's building on memories for generations to come.
This south bedroom was added on in about 1948.
This black land of opportunity remains in his family and in the hands of new friends who would have loved to be neighbors 100 years ago.
This is a part of our family's American dream.
To kick off this year's Black History Month, state lawmakers named February 1st Barney Ford Day.
It's a move to honor the legacy of one of Colorado's earliest black political and business leaders. Barney Ford was a black leader in Colorado in the 1800s, born into slavery but escaped and ultimately rose to success as one of the first black people to arrive in Denver. He opened a hotel and a restaurant and bought a home in Breckenridge that you can still visit today. He also played a crucial role in lobbying for universal suffrage and Colorado's Constitution when the state was joining the Union. Today, he's buried in Denver's Riverside Cemetery, and there's a stained glass portrait of him in the Colorado House of Representatives chambers. Up next, we take you to the metro area as it is today.
And where one black-owned business is hoping to shape the future of Denver by staying true to its history in the city's Five Points neighborhood.
We want to introduce you to Obi Azadi, a Westminster City Council member who's breaking barriers. He's a first-generation American with Nigerian roots and only the second black person ever to hold a position with City Council. A Colorado resident since 2016, Obi won his race in November of 2021, receiving the most votes for a councilor in the city's history. While he's felt overwhelmingly supported by the community, he still faces hate every day in a city that's only 4% black.
To just go back to Africa, or hey slave, or you shucking and jiving, and there's all sorts of messages that they come up with.
But he says that's only strengthening his commitment to helping change the city and inviting others to join him.
You can do it too. Advocate for what you want changed.
Butch Hicks was the first black person elected to the City Council in Westminster. He was elected in 1999.
Now we take you to Denver's Five Points neighborhood, a historically black neighborhood that's changing quickly. And while many longtime businesses have had to leave the area, one mainstay of the neighborhood is fighting to stay. Dominic Garcia takes us to the Welton Street Cafe.
Happy birthday! It's your birthday!
From birthdays to business lunches.
Happy birthday!
Fatima Dickerson has poured her heart and soul into the Welton Street Cafe for decades.
I love feeding people. I love feeding people.
Feeding people's stomachs and their souls.
We're here for family, we're here for community, and we're here to serve.
And during those decades, she's seen 5 Points change.
It's a beautiful storm to see the city grow, but when you're looking for those places that are authentic and have that relationship with the people that make the community, that's the piece where you're just like, where are we going?
It's a question she's now facing. Their lease is up and there is no way they're leaving the street they're named after.
We're still holding on to what we believe in. We need community spaces for the black community where all generations can come and feel like they belong.
Fatima has a new spot picked out a block down Welton, but it's totally empty, and getting it ready is going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
We have to get plumbing, we have to get HVAC, we have to get electrical work, we have to get appliances, we have to get furniture, and so we have to build the complete restaurant.
A GoFundMe campaign is helping. They're even selling Welton Street merch to raise money. Anything to save this family affair.
My parents and I, my twin brother, and my sister Senya. And so actively on a daily basis, there are 5 family members.
Fatima loves this restaurant, this street, this whole neighborhood, and she knows that feeling is mutual.
Talk about a love story. Welton Street Cafe and the patrons that is what's kept us here.
That's Dominic Garcia reporting. Coming up, we dive into the reality of healthcare inequities Black Coloradans are facing.
And we highlight one woman fighting for a more inclusive healthcare industry right here in the state.
We want to take a moment to highlight the inequities in our healthcare system and the people that work to change them. A number of health issues are more prevalent in the Black community. Black Americans 35 to 64 are 50% more likely to have high blood pressure than white Americans. And the CDC says African American adults are more likely to skip doctor visits due to cost.
We spoke to Dr. Reggie Washington, Chief Medical Officer at Presbyterian St. Luke's and Rocky Mountain Hospital for Children, about the reality of our health system and what Black Coloradans should know. He tells us a lot of these problems stem from systemic issues.
If you go to a physician or a healthcare provider and get a prescription for your high blood pressure medicine or your diabetes medicine, but there's no drugstore nearby, there's no drugstore easily accessible to you, you're less likely to get that prescription filled. If your healthcare provider tells you to eat fruits and vegetables every day, but where you shop for groceries, there are no fresh fruits or vegetables, or they're very expensive, that becomes an issue.
While African Americans may be victims of these obstacles, Dr. Washington also says it's critical for people who are facing health problems to stick with their care over time.
You need to have your blood pressure continually monitored. You cannot go to a healthcare facility once a year or once every other year to an emergency room for your visit. You must go for well child or well visits, normal physicals, so that you know how you're doing with your blood pressure.
Another major point he made in terms of working toward change within the healthcare system is the importance of employing a diverse staff of providers, a change he's fighting for within his own hospitals.
People like to go to healthcare providers that look and act like them. So we're increasing our minority primary caregivers so that people feel more comfortable getting the care they need. But they also need to have access to health care, and that's beyond the total responsibility of the hospital. We have to do a better job as a country of providing places where people can get their health care.
And that change is needed across all levels of the healthcare system. Right now, less than 5% of all healthcare leadership positions are held by women of color. One of those women is right here in Colorado. Dr. Jendale Allen Davis at Craig Hospital tells us the lack of women of color among healthcare leaders is sad and sobering, and it's something she wants to change. Since taking her role in 2018, one of her goals has been creating a more inclusive and diverse environment. A high school apprenticeship program is just one way Craig is working to achieve that.
All kids of color, for them to see, oh my gosh, there's a CEO and president, who spends time and wants to talk to us, but more importantly, she looks like us.
And she's challenging others to join her. She says it's not just her responsibility. White men play a huge role in opening the doors for people of color. Up next, we walk you through Black history right here at CBS 4.
From the first Black anchor in Colorado to the people who helped get the news on the air today.
Diversity in newsrooms help us build trust through greater representation, ultimately providing better coverage for you at home.
KCNC has been a leader in journalism's ongoing effort to build teams that reflect the community we serve. Here's a look at our Black history at Channel 4.
From KCNC TV, this is the Colorado Evening News.
In 1969, a Black woman brought Colorado the news for the first time.
Here's what's happening.
Raynelda Muse opened doors for journalists at Channel 4. Many you might remember.
And our first day as a CBS station.
You watched Byron Brown take us from NBC to the CBS 4 we are today. You turned to anchors like Chris Schabel, Erica Lewis, and Gloria Neal before iPhones informed you first.
What'd you find, Gloria?
Oh boy, Karen.
Some took different paths but stayed close to home.
Rahel, good morning.
Today, other cities tune into anchors like Rahel Solomon and Evrod Cassimy.
This event is much more than a fundraiser.
And there's much more viewers don't see.
This is CBS 4 This Morning.
Producers like Gabrielle Cox and Josh Thicklin bring you the latest every morning. Kemma Beta's computer savvy keeps us running, and chief photographer Kevin Hartfield has captured decades of moments.
So I checked in with an expert.
CBS 4 celebrates 52 years of Black journalists, giving a voice to our communities
From across Colorado.
and covering Colorado first.
Thank you for joining us for this special presentation of Elevating Black Voices.
Because Black history is our history.